I don't know if you want to like pick our team, like if we want to pick teams or if we want to do randoms or like what you want to do. I'm cool with whatever.
Um, I can be okay with whatever. I mean, I'm a Cardinals fan, so I usually play with the Cardinals, but I can pick something else.
That's what I am too. That's who I usually play with.
Damn.
Shit,
All
we
right.
could do like the Legends teams.
We could do the Legends teams. Um, I feel like this should be able to switch teams faster.
Yeah. Oh, apparently maybe we can't play with the Legends teams.
Yeah.
That's fine. I can play with somebody else.
All right. Who are you thinking?
Shit, I'll be, man, I don't know. I'll be the Braves.
You're gonna be the Braves.
Yeah. You
Okay.
can be the Cardinals.
I don't even know if the Braves are any good or not.
They won the East,
Well, fuck.
but the team that got second in the East won the World Series, so.
Yeah. All right. Let's. Yeah, that would have been the Nationals. Let's go.
Did you start the stream?
Yeah, the stream has started up. So, but I'll actually like start the show here in a second when I pick a damn team.
Okay. I was going to say I probably should pissed before, but whatever. We're good.
Go for it. You got
All
a
right.
second.
Yeah. I'll be back in just a second.
All right. Apologies for everybody that's tuned in and is expecting us to be talking already. We're picking teams, and Jared is getting comfy here real quick, and then we will actually start the show. I'm trying to figure out who I want to use. He's got the Braves. The Indians. I've kind of had my eye on the Twins. We're both Cardinals fans, so we're not going to use the Cardinals. I'm kind of thinking about going with the Athletics here, just for shits and giggles. I think I'm going to go with the... Oh, I can change? That's awesome. All right. Ooh, that's much better. Nah, we'll go with that. I don't know why I insist on punishing myself with the Athletics, but here we go. So, hope everybody's had a good day so far. If you are interested, Jared, the stream is up on Twitter if you feel like retweeting and such.
Yeah, I'll do that in 1 second.
So in case anybody hasn't noticed yet, we're going to be playing MLB The Show 20. Promise. So those uniforms are dope. The old Hank Aaron uniforms.
Yeah. Probably should wear that. Need some more hats, man.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So before we get going, actually let's pick our park. Where do we want to play? Should we play something totally ridiculous?
Yeah, somewhere classic.
Play the Polo Grounds.
All right, sounds good.
No, we're not playing the Polo Grounds. I did that against Matthias, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's not good. What are you thinking? Get an opinion? Ballpark at Arlington's nice.
Yes, that works for me.
Good story. I actually saw the very last Dallas Renegades game ever at the ballpark at Arlington.
Nice. I feel like it's got to be October.
Oh, yes. October.
This is the World Series, man. Man, what the hell?
They have trash pitching or what?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know any of these people because I don't pay attention to the Athletics, so we're going to roll with it.
Go with this lefty. This might be interesting.
All right. So now that we're starting to load into the game, we should have welcomed everybody to our currently unnamed podcast. Hopefully we'll figure out something soon. But I'm Levi Stevenson from Wide Right Natty Light, and I'm joined by Jared Stansbury from Cyclone Fanatic. How's it going, Jared?
What's up, man?
Just enjoying Good Thursday evening. Wow, they actually had the exact same record, 97-65, huh? Anyways, so for anybody that is not familiar with our general, kind of what I didn't tune in last week, what we want this podcast to be essentially is we're going to stream the game while we're doing it, but we want it to be an opportunity to discuss different topics and specifically take the side of the argument that isn't always discussed. To take kind of the unpopular argument. We find something that has a kind of almost a consensus, and one of us takes that, makes that case, and the other one, their job is to take kind of the hopeless case and attempt to convince everybody watching that that's actually the correct answer. Oh, come on, get out there. Whew.
Hit that harder than I did.
Yeah. So this week's topic is whether or not NCAA athletes should be paid. Jared has elected to take the stance that NCAA athletes should be paid, and I will be making the counter, which is, and I guess, Jared, you can feel free to disagree with me if you want, but I would call that more of the consensus opinion at this point in time.
I would agree with that.
So I think, well, and then after that, once Jared makes his case, the plan, oh, that's not good at all. The plan is for me to essentially argue against that and argue that the payers actually shouldn't be paid for various reasons. And we're going to try to do all that, having a tense and a complex conversation while also trying to not suck at video games. So, Jared, would you like to go first and state your case?
Do we want to do it? Do we want to do it where it's like one versus like, or do we just want to have a discussion? Like, do you want me to give like, do we want to do one reason at a time, or do we want it to be like where we go on diatribes, tangents?
No, let's not do it. Let's not do the big diatribes and monologues. Let's not do that. So I guess, in your opinion, I guess what is kind of the primary reason, the big reason why athletes should be paid?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at the biggest reason, it's the fact that the people who are, truly participating in these sports, the ones who are, I guess, especially in the case of football, the ones who are putting their bodies on the line and things like that, are the ones who aren't seeing any of the cut. And yeah, I know that they're getting a college scholarship and all that kind of stuff, but it's like, there's these coaches out there who are getting paid millions of dollars. There's athletic directors who are paid millions and millions of dollars. There's a lot of people out there who are making a lot of money off of these people who are playing a sport that, has obviously been proven to be pretty dangerous. And those people aren't, the people who are putting their bodies on the line aren't the ones who are seeing any of the cut. I mean, I think that that's kind of the basic crux of it. And then obviously when it comes to like college basketball, I mean, I think we're seeing right now that college basketball is going to be in an interesting position just because of the fact that now the NBA is opening its doors to more and more younger players.
Yeah.
And they're making it more and more profitable to join the NBA system at an earlier age, to where college basketball almost will be in a position where they have to start doing something to stay competitive, and they're doing that a little bit with the name, image, and likeness. But they could take it a step further and make it a more concrete situation than just this is every man for himself.
Right. And and part of it too is the revenue numbers that these programs are bringing in are just kind of extraordinary at this point.
Yeah, astronomical.
I have some figures kind of set aside from the 2017-2018 school year, which Texas, number one revenue program in the country, that's no surprise, brought almost $220 million in for their athletics program. It's crazy how much money these guys are making.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy amount of money, and you sent me your spreadsheet and the number that jumps out to me is the fact that just from football, like you had the numbers broken down and all that kind of stuff, and the revenue for just Texas football was like, what was it, 94 million?
Yeah, the Texas's profit on football was $99 million.
Yeah, $99 million, which, there's 85 scholarship players.
Another 20 walk-ons.
And then there's another 20 walk-ons. And I think that would be, that would obviously be part of it, is like, how are you going to, how, like, do the walk-ons get compensated too? Because
right.
I think that would, it just kind of creates I don't know. That's another interesting discussion. And it's like, with
the walk-ons too,
down, they would make like 94. They could in theory make $94,000 per player.
No, that's $944,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Texas football players, if you include walk-ons,
you're making my argument better.
Yeah, I am. You're right. It's my spreadsheet. I don't want you messing up my spreadsheet. I don't want you. I can do math. Excel can do math. But we are going to, you look at this, and like you said, $944,000 per Texas football player that they earned, which is an astronomical amount. Now, obviously, Texas A&M. They're at the top, and then after that, there's a significant gap, and it keeps going down. I've got some numbers set aside on my spreadsheet here. That has Texas as the number 1 revenue, Kentucky's number 20. Iowa State is 47, Houston at 59, Kennesaw State at 120, and Nicholls State at 216 for their revenue rankings. But I think for the purposes of this, because I think most of the argument for paying players, like you said, kind of the crux of it is around just the absurd amounts of money that some of these programs are making right now. Texas is obviously the most extreme example of this at this point. So I think it's best to take a look at them, and then we can kind of work backwards from there, because any sort of hardship Texas has to deal with for paying players is going to be magnified significantly at every other school.
See, and the question that I'll ask too is, you say that Texas is number 1, Texas A&M is number 2, and then there's like a stiff drop off. Like what does Ohio State bring in a year, and what is that drop off like from Texas to Iowa State?
So Texas brought in $219 million. Iowa State brought in $88 million. So that's 2 schools in the same conference, and there is $140,000 difference.
Which I think we can agree is, either way, both of those amounts of money are.
Yeah, even $88 million is a ton, just a ton of money. Yeah. Now, it's worth noting that these schools also have some pretty extraordinary expenditures. They've got to pay football coaches. They've got another kind of a big part of this too is the facilities war that's been going on for the last 10 years or so, where everybody's trying to get the newer and bigger TVs in their locker rooms. And that's all part of it too. So there's some pretty huge expenses. So Texas spent more money than anybody else too. Texas spent $206 million, almost $207 million on athletics in 2017, 2018 too. So they're making lots of money, but they're also spending it at kind of an absurd rate. Get them out. Oh, what? So if you look at, like I said, Texas is going to be the example I'm going to go back to, because they are kind of the most extravagant example here, and every other program is kind of looking up from a revenue and profit standpoint, and everything gets worse from here. If you look at their revenue and their expenses on a per athlete basis, so Texas brings in about $321,000 per athlete in revenue. Yeah, I'm gonna crack me a Busch Light here real quick. Ugh. And they spend about $302,000. So they make a lot of money. For each Texas athlete makes a lot of money, but they also spend a lot of money. But like we said before, Texas football players, profit. This is after revenue and expenses are both taken into account. They account for $944,000 in profit per player. So football is really offsetting this. And actually, even at Texas, arguably the biggest brand in college sports, only two sports actually make money: football and men's basketball. Women's basketball doesn't make it. Their swimming teams that have won 40 consecutive conference tournaments aren't profitable. None of them are profitable. Football makes a ton of money, and basketball makes about $8 million. And that was bad. And after that, nothing at Texas makes money. And I think part of this argument too,
How many sports does Texas have?
Actual sports, I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But total athletes that they have, they have 682 student athletes. Kentucky's got 562. Iowa State has 570. Houston has 526. Kennesaw State has 279. And Nicholls State has 356.
How many sports? Like Kennesaw State must have like 5 sports.
Yeah, teams. It's not very many.
They do have football, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so they've got football and they've got men's basketball. Oh man,
I smoked it.
Yeah, holy cow. They've got football and they've got men's basketball, which would, obviously an FCS football roster is smaller than an FBS one. So, it's probably still 80 people. And then you've got, 15 on a basketball team.
Yeah.
They can't have many. I bet they have a baseball team, maybe like a handful of other sports, even
yeah.
other than that.
And obviously with Title IX, they'll have equal men's and women's sports.
Right.
Whatever is required by Title IX.
Yeah.
But, even at Kennesaw State, their football program is probably the only one that makes money. And
even then, it might not make that much money.
Right. And most of their money is dependent on their buy games, where people, where Alabama or South Carolina or somebody buys a Kennesaw State game so they can beat the crap out of them. And try to hit me at the high heater.
That's a good eye.
Even those, they don't make much money at all. I don't have you son of a. Yeah, you froze me. But even those teams, they just don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of money to spare. But to make me work a little bit harder at this, since Texas has so much money, I'll go back to them a little bit. So, interestingly enough, I actually do have breakdowns on men's and women's sports. So men's sports at Texas made about $154 million, spent about $52, so they profited about $102 million to $103 million off of men's sports. Women's sports came in at a $13 million loss.
Yeah.
So that's tricky.
Yeah, and that's where, man, that's crazy. That's a lot of money.
Texas is willingly not willingly or not taking. That's a Title IX argument. That's a whole different argument. But Texas is taking a $13 million loss to have all of its women's sports. So that's a tough one there. So I think let's paint a couple of scenarios where we're gonna pay the players. There's a couple ways you can approach it. First, you can say whatever. This is probably the easiest way to do it. Is whatever the school makes as an actual profit on top of their expenditures. The revenue minus their expenditures. Take that, whatever difference you got, pay it to the athletes. If you do that, in the case of Texas, their total difference there, they made $219 million, spent $206.5 million, which comes out to a profit of comes out to a profit of just under $13 million total. Decent profit there. Now, one thing I didn't factor in that Texas did do is they actually wrote a check for $10 million and gave it to the university itself to pay for other stuff. But I'm not going to factor that in. Because in this scenario, you obviously wouldn't donate that to the university. You would just keep it for the athletes. Mm-hmm. So in that case, $12 million, you divide that by your $682 million. That's about $18,800 that you make off of an athlete, essentially, in profit. Now, the way I've heard this argument described, you can correct me, you can change my argument, or you change my parameters if you need. But I've heard the argument that it's basically a full-time job. Now, obviously, athletes are not, in season year round. I mean, they are, but they're not. They're still doing their own workouts on the side and stuff like that year round, but they're not actually in practice at the facilities. All that stuff. So I figured it for 6 months. 6 months at 40 hours a week. That's a full-time job for half the year. That's 5,200 man hours. This is my construction background coming into play here, where you're talking about man hours. But yeah, 5,200 man hours worked over 6 months. If you divide that out, it's $18,838.93 in total profits per player. Divide that out by 5,200 man hours, and that math comes out to essentially a wage at Texas of $3.62 an hour that Texas makes off their athletes' labor rate. $3.62 is not
it's hardly even half of the minimum wage.
Minimum wage in Iowa. If you take it in California, it's a $15 minimum wage and all this or whatever. So I'm just figuring off a $17. I'm just figuring off a $7. I have some calculations here about figuring off a $7.25 an hour minimum wage. But now, so Texas, an athlete will make $3.62 an hour. If you pay them the profit. At Kentucky, 20th ranked revenue program in the country, big ass basketball program, makes more money than probably any other basketball program. $1.81. Take it. I don't know if you saw on the thing, but an Iowa State athlete, their hourly wage, if you paid them the profits on an hourly basis and split it evenly among the athletes, 3 cents an hour. 3 cents an hour. Can you imagine telling an athlete, we're going to pay you 3 cents an hour for your time? Poor Houston athletes. Houston actually lost money in 2017, 2018. So they'd actually have to pay the university 72 cents an hour, or they get nothing. If you wanted to go like total capitalist and say that the employees have to split the losses, which obviously wouldn't do that because they're college athletes.
Would not do that.
No, but Kennesaw State 8 cents an hour, Nicholls State 24 cents an hour. So if you're just taking profits, you are not paying these people anything close to a legal wage. Now, granted, there's they're getting a scholarship, which at Texas, a yearly scholarship gets you about for in-state. If you just take an in-state tuition, your yearly scholarship is worth about $10,200. $11,000 at Kentucky, just under $9,000 at Iowa State. Kennesaw State, Nicholls State, good value schools, $6,300 and $7,900.
And their acceptance rate's probably about 100%.
It's probably it's probably very high.
Yeah.
So you're still getting a scholarship on top of these, but it's not much. Now, $18,000 a year for a college athlete, you can make that go a long ways, but that's only at Texas. And Nicholls at Kennesaw State. Actually, let's even look at Iowa State. That's the most extreme one. At Iowa State, if you took our profit, divided up amongst on a per athlete basis, they profited Iowa State $146. $146. That get your groceries for a week, maybe.
Right.
For one person.
See, and the thing that to me that it would come when you're throwing all these numbers out there and things like that, is it how much would the budget change when you have to factor in that you are going to pay whatever that amount is, like is it only going to be a revenue sharing type thing, or is it going to be something where it's like there is like a systemic and this is what if we're going to talk about like what is really happening like right now with the name, image, and likeness, this is what the big thing to me is right now is like where in the new NCAA's guidelines that they put out for the rule that could go into place like in January or something like that for next school year, is not giving them the ability to collectively bargain or organize, basically, where the
Right.
players unionize more or less.
Yeah.
And that's why they're not. They talk about like NCAA football and stuff like that. That's why NCAA football at this point, based under the current recommendations, would not be coming back, is just because the players don't have the ability to.
They can't collectively bargain.
Yeah, they can't collectively bargain, and that's where it's like, if you're going to collectively bargain, then how do you pick your union representation and all
Right.
those kinds of things when the players are turning over every single year? And I'm kind of speaking against my argument right now, but those are the things that I wonder about, because I know, if the university was in a position where it's like, okay, every school is going to have to pay kids, X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
They don't even base it on your revenue or anything like that. Or, I mean, maybe there's some sort of sliding scale or something like that. I'm just saying, like, completely hypothetical. It's like, okay, we're going to pay them. Everyone has to be paid this amount. Okay, well then, like, who's going to negotiate that amount? And who's going to be the ones who decides, like, okay, well, Texas makes this much money. This is how much money athletes at the University of Texas are required to make by their agreement, that their collective bargaining agreement. And then at the same time, that would create a competitive
advantage. Yep.
Yeah, it would create a competitive advantage for Texas, because of the fact that just by the letter of the student athletes negotiating, they're going to make more money, just because of the fact that Texas as a whole makes more money.
Right.
So then you take that, you've got that set figure, or whatever, like that, you're going into the year. Maybe do they not spend as much on facilities? Do they not spend as much on, whatever other random things there might be? And like, that's where I'm not smart enough to sit here and like figure this stuff out, just because
Sure.
There's so many different things that are going to go into it. Dang, I threw that away.
Woo.
And that's like, I mean, I believe that players should be compensated in some way, and I'll just be flat out, like, I don't think that they should be paid an hourly wage, just because it's like, it's so hard to figure that out. I don't think anybody can truly figure that out.
So I've got some numbers that can give you, like, get us in the ballpark. Anyways, ballpark. So like I said,
I'm kind of going against the.
No, you're good. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. We're trying to get as detailed as we can. There's still even more nuance to this than even we can get into here.
Especially while playing video games.
I'm actually fairly impressed with our ability so far to successfully play the video games and have this discussion. Maybe that's what this podcast is really about. Is let's see how on topic Jared and Levi can stay while they play video games.
Yeah.
But anyways, so at the 6 months of 40 hours a week that I calculate, so 5,200 man hours, your gross wages at $7.25 an hour is $37,700. So let's say you paid. Get out there. Looped it? Ooh. So let's say you pay each athlete minimum wage for 6 months a year for a full-time wage. That's, so $37,700. Ooh. So if you pair that up with their in-state tuition, because in this situation, when you're paying players, there's a lot of schools that are probably going to have to eliminate the scholarship to make this work.
Right.
But let's say you don't eliminate the scholarship. At Texas, that puts you at $47,980 that it's costing to have this student athlete on campus, between their yearly scholarship and their wage. Now, this is obviously not including room and board, which usually the school puts them up in a dorm or an apartment. Usually an apartment. At most schools, it'd be an apartment.
Come on, throw a strike.
So at Texas, if you're spending $37,700 per 6 months on an athlete, at 682 athletes, get down. That puts you at $25 million, $25,711,000 on wages for student athletes at Texas. Shit, I don't know why I didn't swing at that. You caught me while I was making a point. Maybe that's the real kicker. Is you just wait till the other one's talking and you start trying to do something. Shit. But anyways, so $25 million in wages at Texas. Now, Texas is at a significant advantage here because they can't afford to pay it, but they can afford to pay it better than a lot of other schools can. Shit.
Hung it to you too.
Oh my God. But labor.
See, this is why you don't come with a spreadsheet. You're sitting there looking at
I'm too prepared. So the problem for schools that are not Texas is that labor rate doesn't scale based on how much you make. $7.25 an hour is $7.25 an hour, whether it's in Texas or it's in Louisiana at Nicholls State. So Iowa State, that has 570 athletes, is still paying them $7.25 an hour. So that's $21 million that Iowa State is spending on wages. Because, as you said before, if schools are allowed to pay them differently, that creates a significant competitive advantage for the larger schools, and then it gets just way out of hand. So assuming that every school has to pay the same amount, it effectively becomes a minimum wage, which is still an advantage for the big schools because they can get closer to affording it. But even at Texas, if you include our athlete wages, which is $25 million, throw that on top of their expenditures, which means that in this hypothetical scenario, between their actual expenditures and athlete wages, that puts you at $232 million. Just get there. $232 million, which means that even Texas would have lost almost $13 million. Iowa State, their new expenses become $110 million, as opposed to their $88 in revenue. That gets you to $21 million in loss for the athletic department.
I'm warming up a pitcher, so you know.
Yeah, I should probably do that same thing. I haven't been paying attention. Oh wait, I can't do that. Can I do that?
Right,
should be able to do that. All right, let me pick a picture here real quick. I got to suspend. You want to get a word in edgewise? I've been talking for a while.
I'll say, no, I think the thing, another question that all of this creates, or when you talk about those losses and things like that, something that I think would be a realistic possibility at that point is that, and I don't know, I'm not well versed enough in Title IX, and you might have a better idea of what the exact numbers of this would need to be. But at that point, I would think that they would start trying to, it would be a question of, okay, how do we decrease the number of athletes that we have, while still trying to stay within the parameters of Title IX, and that's where they need to have an equal opportunity of scholarship numbers. Is that correct?
It's pretty. Yeah, it has to do with now. It's not like it's not perfectly even. Like Iowa State has 353 male athletes and 247 female athletes, but it's a certain percentage. Like as Iowa State has more male athletes, but they have significantly more women's sports.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, because they've got, almost because of the fact that, like, when you have football,
later,
when you have football, like, that's 85 guaranteed scholarships right there.
Right.
And then basketball would be another
15. So you're at 100 scholarships between those two sports right off the bat.
Just those two sports. And, but then you look at the other men's sports that Iowa State has, which is wrestling.
Later. God. Woo! Let's go.
Yeah. Wrestling and men's track. And cross country would be rolled into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, wrestling, men's basketball, football, cross country, track, golf.
Oh yeah, and golf. And the thing about wrestling, cross country, track, and golf is that all of those are probably are all partial scholarship sports.
Yeah, they're not full scholarships. Yeah.
And
they're still losing money.
Right, and they're still losing money. So it's like, and then all the women's sports would probably be partial scholarship.
Sure.
As well. So it's like, would a school like Iowa State at that point, did they just say, all right, well, we're not going to play anything besides football and basketball?
Because they're the only ones that make money.
Because they're the only ones that make money, and then we will have enough women's sports in order to
break even. Yeah.
In order to break even on that, and like, man,
there's a lot of math that goes into figuring out exactly how that calculus works out. On, if you have football and basketball, can you keep women's basketball and then that's it? Like, then do you run out of money at that point?
Yeah, and that's where it's just like, you can't, like, I try not to just look at this thing from the perspective of like, okay, we're just going to talk about football, because football is probably the main one.
Sure.
Know?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
That's the one, like, when I sit here and think about, like, okay, I can understand why football players would believe that they should be paid when you consider the fact that football,
the physical toll, for sure.
Football's really the only sport that basically can alter the entire future of your physical health. And I mean, basketball can too, I guess.
Sort of.
Wrestling could, but you know, like, for the most part, like, that's the only one that really on.
Football players are the only ones where if you live into your 60s as a professional or as a former football player, you are living a lot longer than most of your fellow teammates.
Yeah.
As morbid as that is to say.
Right. It's sad to say that, and hopefully, like, that will change. You know, we've been trying to do as many things as we can to make sure that that's not the case, but at this point, that's the reality that we live in. And that's a good slider. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So that's where it's just like, I get why people talk about it from the perspective of football, because football is obviously the big one.
Sure, and they see the teams like Texas and Alabama and Ohio State raking in Texas A&M, just raking in absurd amounts of money.
Yeah,
so I get it.
I think the reality too is that, like, you and me are probably, I mean, you and me pay a lot more attention to Iowa State than what, you know, like, the average person pays to, you know, Alabama. Like, how many Alabama football fans, or Texas football fans even for that matter, care about the Texas swimming and diving team?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, how many of them care about the men's basketball team? The team that they should care about the second most, based on how much money they make in.
Yeah, or the baseball team or anything like that, you know, or the softball team. So it's like, it's only like, oh man, we sit here and we hear how much money Texas football makes in a given year. You know, it's like, man, it's crazy that those football players don't get any of that money.
Sure.
Well, okay, but we also have to remember the fact that Texas is legally obligated to have all of these different other things, like, and I feel like we're both kind of arguing the same thing almost.
We've drifted into this point
right down the middle, but
with Freddie Freeman, no less.
Yeah, that's just like, when I sit and think about these things, you know, I understand the morality of, okay, we should pay the players, you know.
To me, I think the name, image, and likeness thing was a much more important thing than paying them a wage. Yeah, and I think that we're making strides there, you know. I like the stride. Like, I feel like it's a positive that now that is a possibility. Yeah.
But it's like, at the same time, how can we keep going further, you know? And that's where I think, like, say for instance, NCAA football.
Yeah.
That to me is a way that schools can basically have a built-in way. Every school in the country can basically have a built-in way that, you know, when you go to school there and you play college football, like, you're going to get X amount of dollars just from NCAA football.
You know what it is too, for like this, for the smaller brands, for the Group of 5 brand, it's a it is actually he's
on the submarine.
Yeah, it's not fun to hit against, but it is almost a sort of recruiting tool for them as well, because they can say, you know, well, you're going to be on the game, but also kids are going to be playing this game or whatever, and, you know, even if they're playing as Alabama or they're playing as Texas or whatever, they're still going to have to play Iowa State on their schedule and be like, oh, I actually know who Iowa State is because I saw them on the NCAA 14 video game, right? You know, on the NCAA football video game. And it's so they can create familiarity with kids before they actually ever even talk to them as recruits.
Right, and you can know, like, I mean, I learned what a lot of the stadiums are in college football from playing
Sure.
NCAA football. Like, you'd seen the Glass Bowl at Toledo.
I could probably hum most of the fight songs at this point.
Yeah, you'd heard the fight songs. You like when you heard that song again, then you're like, oh, I know that song. And the way that you knew it was from playing NCAA football. You know, it didn't have anything to do with the fact that you actually knew anything about whatever school. You might not have even realized that, like, that song was for that school.
Right.
And man, this game's getting intense now.
Yeah, it is.
That's just like, that's why when I saw that thing, the recommendation that they made last week, that was the thing that was disappointing to me. Obviously, I want to play NCAA football as much as anybody.
Sure.
You know? But that seemed like a no-brainer to me, that it's like, okay, how do we get opportunities like this? Because this doesn't have anything to do with what your name recognition is. This doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you've got someone who can go and negotiate for you and get you an opportunity to go and do a commercial for Wilson Toyota, or go and sign autographs at, you know, X business or whatever it may be. Like, that's just about, like, okay, everybody who comes and plays football, like, if you come and play football, you're going to get this kind of money, you know, and it doesn't have to be a ridiculous amount. But
and the nice thing too is that EA Sports can show up to the school and say, we will pay you this much money to be in this game.
Yeah. And you
know how many of them are going to take that check? 100%.
Yeah, every single one of them.
Even Trevor Lawrence will take a $500 check to be in NCAA football, because you know what? It's marketing for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and at that point too, like, you know, then EA Sports, like, it gives them the opportunity to where they could make an even better game. You know, like, they could come around and do the modeling and
the
like,
face
all
scans,
that kind of stuff that they could do the mocap and like all those kinds of things, like what they do for 2K. I mean, think how many players there are in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they figure out a way to get all of those players onto 2K, and not all of them look exactly correct, but like the majority of them, you know, their jump shots are right, their running style looks pretty similar to what they do in real life. Like, it's possible. There are models out there for how this is done, and the NBA Players Association and like the NFL have obviously existed a lot longer. They've been dealing with this for a lot longer, but it's like, how do you not even consider that possibility to where you don't even include it in the initial proposal?
Right.
That was something to me that had me taken aback, that I was like, man, this seems like something that should have been a no-brainer.
Like why couldn't they have made it like part? I mean, the whole name, image, and likeness thing, let's be real, it centers around the video game.
Yeah,
like,
that's what started it. That's what started the entire.
Like, why are we not centering the discussions around let's make this video game happen? Because literally everybody wants this to happen, and that is the entire reason we're having this discussion in the first place. If Ed O'Bannon hadn't come forward and we were still having an NCAA football game every year, you know how many, like, this wouldn't even be a discussion. We would just be going about our business as we were before. And so when you have, they're just totally ignoring the nexus of this discussion, which is profoundly annoying. Selfishly, because I want to play NCAA football, but
right, it's annoying to us because we would be customers of the product, you know.
Sure.
But I think just as someone who looks at, you know, like, if you just like look at college sports, you're someone who follows college sports, and it's like, we want college sports to be. I mean, I would assume that you're the same way. Like, I want college sports to be the best that they can be for everybody.
Sure.
You know, not just for me. Like,
right.
College sports can't do much for me besides just give me enjoyment. Well, and I mean, I guess it gave me a career, but
say it pays your bills.
Yeah, it pays my bills, but I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, like, if this is gonna be there, like, you want it to be the best experience it can be for everybody.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's why I was just so surprised by that. I was like, man, this was the one thing about this entire deal that if I was on that committee and I'm like, all right, so what are we gonna do here? That would have been one of the first things that I would have thought about, is like, how do we make this happen?
Yeah. It was the first thing that needed to be on their agenda, and it wasn't. Which is I fouled that off. And the fact that they didn't prioritize that is profoundly annoying, because it tells me, like, once again, the NCAA Had a layup. Oh, get moving.
Nope. Well, it just tells me how out of touch they are.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, I was going to say, I was like, we better not be going. It just tells me that they still don't really want to give anybody the satisfaction of just like why can't the NCAA take a layup win? Like why can't they do that?
Right. It's like guys, we're literally like you are being handed it. You're being handed the opportunity to win. You know, like right here. You know, putting it right in front of their face, guys. If you do this, then this will work. Mm-hmm. And they're just like.
It would be like this situation if you just tossed me a batting practice fastball and I didn't swing at a rando.
No, that was 95 miles an hour.
Yeah, that was not good. It's not good.
Got myself out of a jam.
Yeah, that's poor baseball by me.
Warm up my closer. All right, 9th inning.
Yeah, gotta get our shit together. It seems like I just to kind of. Oh my God, what am I doing?
This feels like it's flown by. It's been 45 minutes, but
I'm an idiot. All right.
That's the one thing about when we're sitting here talking. Like if I was sitting here playing with I play with Sean Roberts from the Morning Rush all the time. Shout out to my boy Sean. And when me and him play, there's some times where we'll be playing and it feels like these games take forever.
Oh yeah.
And when we're sitting here talking about things, and I'm trying to think about something else while I'm trying to play.
You just play this game on autopilot, and you just show up in the 9th inning, and it's a one-run game.
It's the 9th inning. Either one of us has scored in like 6 innings.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because you still have to kind of maintain that focus. But I think through this whole thing, though, I think we sort of accidentally, or whatever you want to call it, talked ourselves into both being kind of on board that it's not that we shouldn't pay players, but it's just not realistic at this point in time. That is real bad. I can't believe that just happened.
And I don't know that. Damn, I scored?
Why did you score? Do I not know the rules of the game?
I definitely wasn't running, so I shouldn't have gotten a free base. I was just sitting on second base. Shit, I mean, I'm not going to complain, but
yeah. Bummer. All right.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I don't know either. Okay, but yeah, I think we've both gotten to the point where it's just financially it just isn't realistic right now, unless the whole thing hinges on whether the athletes are willing to take a significant hit to quality of life. Because if you make all these cuts to these programs so that you can keep all your programs, keep all your athletes, and pay them, new facilities aren't going to happen. They're not going to happen. You're going to be sitting in the same locker rooms for 50 years or forever. You're not, the schools that are doing like the really cool nutrition programs, those will probably get cut. You're going to have a whole bunch of athletes limit on ramen noodles like they used to. And
I live on ramen noodles, so it's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. They're not that bad. Actually, I've gotten to the point where I like ramen noodles. But you're talking about a significant quality of life drop if you're not willing to give up sports and you want to get paid, because it's just in this situation. I don't like to I should say I don't like you. There are very few things in life that are truly zero-sum arguments. This is one of them. There is a finite amount of money, and most schools are already at that cap right now as far as their spending, and athletes are accustomed to a certain they're accustomed to getting nutrition. They're accustomed to getting free athletic training, and if they get hurt, the school pays for their surgery. They're accustomed to getting a lot of that stuff, and all of a sudden you take that away, and now, sure, they're getting paid, but now, they're getting dirty. That's not nice at all. They're getting paid, but now they got to pay for tuition. They got to take out a student loan.
Yeah.
And actually, one thing we didn't talk about either is how college kids are stupid. If you give a walk-on Texas football player $944,000 a year,
that's not.
That's asking for trouble. That is asking for trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, like with some of those sports, like, so here's the thing that would suck about it. With some of those sports, you think about track, wrestling, volleyball, swimming, those non-revenue sports. Like there would still be opportunities out there, but the number of opportunities that would be available would be cut so drastically that it would, like the best mile runners are still going to get an opportunity to go and train somewhere and become the best mile runner, But
Sure.
it's like basically you just become a professional right away,
Right.
rather than going to college and all that kind of stuff. Man, why?
Right.
Okay.
Get moving.
Oh
Yes, there we go. All right. We might have to halt our discussion here for a second. I've got to focus.
Do you get what I'm saying when I say
Yeah,
that?
yeah, absolutely.
I was not saying it very eloquently because I'm trying to get the last out in this game, but
Yeah.
but it's just like there's always going to be opportunities in, there's the kid from who I don't know how much you follow track, but there was the kid who was at Indian Hills last year, who was like 4th in the world in the 200
Yeah.
as a freshman,
Yeah.
and he left Indian Hills after his freshman season
Damn it.
to go and join the Nike track program.
Yeah.
Like, for a kid like that who more or less could probably be considered the athletics equivalent of a prodigy,
Right.
there's always going to be opportunities. But there won't be the opportunities for the people who are, not the best of the best.
Right.
And that's really where college athletics, like they're benefiting those people who are average, they're better than the normal person, but as far average by like relative to college athletics, like they're benefiting those people as much or more than they're benefiting the people who are like the best of the best,
Right.
College football is benefiting the 3-star, 2-star recruit a lot more probably than it's benefiting the 5-star recruit. Like obviously the 5-star recruit is getting the marketing, the exposure, and those kinds of things that he wouldn't get probably normally. But
Yeah.
I think we're going to see here with what's happening in the sport of basketball that, these 5-star recruits can go and play for this select team in Sioux Falls.
Right.
And they might not get that same kind of, national name exposure, like household name exposure that they would by playing college basketball.
Right.
But at the end of the day, everybody's probably going to know who they are anyway because the NBA already knows them. They could be the first, second pick in the NBA draft.
The NBA will make sure to market that, like that the incoming G League team that's full of high schoolers. They're going to market that 100%.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's going to be opportunities for those guys, and it's not about them. That like college sports isn't really built for them. It's built for the other people. And
It's built for the Braxton Lewises and the Cole Nettons and the of the world.
And even a Brock Purdy
And Brock,
like someone like Brock Purdy who was not a 5-star recruit. Like
NFL
was always going to find Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
But NFL wasn't necessarily always going to find Brock Purdy.
In a world where the football has a G League like the NBA and the same thing is happening, Trevor Lawrence they would try to sign Trevor Lawrence and get him on that G League team.
Right.
Brock Purdy gets nowhere close, nowhere near it.
Yeah, and that's like, you look at even like how sports are, like in Europe with like soccer select programs,
sure,
like all those kinds of things. And
soccer is an interesting one because they have academies that go down to like 8 years old.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, man, I don't think we are that far off from a day when basketball could probably go to something like that.
An academy system like soccer
academies, and kids are basically going to high schools that are built for basketball.
Sure. Yeah. Like Oak Hill Academy is one that's been around for a long time. That they are there for basketball, and like IMG Academy in Florida, they're there for football and basketball. They pump out athletes. That's what they do.
I don't even mean it like that. I'm saying almost like the NBA owns an academy in Africa.
Yeah, where the
best basketball players in Africa go to this place, and they live there, and they play basketball, and they study, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah,
and most of them probably would end up being placed in in a professional league in Europe or in Africa. But the idea is that if we can get these kids into our system and all those kinds of things, then maybe eventually they could come and play in the NBA.
Right.
And I think that what's going on right now in the world has almost sped up that process in the United States to where eventually it isn't that crazy to think that the top, 20 kids in a class basically are already in the NBA system by the time they're like freshmen in high school.
Yeah, so that way, like, the recruiting rankings already reflect the lack of the top 20 players in the class because they've already been sucked up by the NBA.
Right, and the top 20, then the 21st kid would basically become the number one.
Right.
And then he's going to Duke or whatever, and it
Right.
might, on some level, it might drop the quality of play in college basketball. I don't think it would that drastically because at that point, I think that it would.
And those players are usually concentrated on a couple teams, anyways.
Yeah, but it would also take away some of the. I think if those 20 kids were already in the NBA system, it might deter some people from doing the one and done type thing and stuff like that. And there might be the diamonds in the rough that people don't know about. There's going
to be a lot of players that get a chance that they wouldn't have gotten a chance before.
Yeah.
At least 20.
But there's also going to be more people who stay in college because it's like, all right, well, I already know that these 20 kids are probably going to be the top picks.
Right.
Is it worth it for me to just stay in college for one more year and try and develop and then go like that?
College athletes are going to come out far more polished than they are now.
Yeah, and it would push the colleges too to be like, all right, well, now we got to compete with these people,
Right.
To develop our athletes the best that we possibly can. Otherwise, why would anyone come and play college basketball? Like,
right.
They see that it's not going to give them any sort of opportunity,
Right.
And
I mean, and the thing too is that, but though, is like, especially in college basketball, the teams that end up shining in March, which is where Steph Curry has an NBA career because of that March. I mean, teams knew about him before that, but that was when he really took off. Before that, he's probably a late second round pick, and he ends up in the D League for a while, and then we see what happens. But without that March, Steph Curry may never become Steph Curry. So March makes a lot of NBA careers for a lot of guys. And the teams that tend to do really good in March also tend to be really, veteran heavy. Outside of that Kentucky team with Anthony Davis and outside of the Duke team with Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett and all that, the freshman-laden teams may make it a few games into the tournament, but they run into a veteran team and all of a sudden they lose. The best college teams, college basketball, this is where we're sort of drifting into another discussion on, is college basketball going to die because of the NBA?
Yeah,
but
I don't think it will die, but it's just going to.
It'll be different.
Change.
I think it'll be different. I think you're going to have more veteran teams. You're going to have a higher overall quality of play, I think, because you're going to have fewer underclassmen playing. But you just may not have the top end star power like a Zion Williamson or something like that. But you could also make the argument too that Zion Williamson isn't the number one overall pick if he doesn't go to Duke, because coming out of high school,
Barrett probably would have been.
Yeah, RJ Barrett would have been, because Zion Williamson coming out of high school was a YouTube sensation. We knew everyone saw his YouTube videos, but
but that's where if they have that, those academies, like Zion would go to that academy, RJ'd be at the academy or whatever,
sure.
And then then maybe when they turn 18, that's when they join the team. It would almost be like the AAU circuit, man. Like,
oh yeah,
you basically just play against because they're in that idea. There would be an academy in California. There'd be an academy in
Texas, one in Virginia, one in Florida,
a West Coast academy, a Southwest academy, a Central academy. And when I was first talking about this I was talking to Steph Copley on one of our podcasts, and I was sitting there thinking, and I said, man, they could put it in Des Moines. Shit, it wouldn't even be that crazy to think if they put it in Des Moines, where you could be right at the intersection of Minneapolis, Kansas City, Omaha, Chicago.
Yep.
In all of those cities, I'm not saying that will happen, but it's like
it would make sense. It's at the intersection of two of the biggest interstates in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I-80 and I-35 connect Texas and Minnesota, California and Virginia.
It's like if you put the NBA's intermediate Central Academy in Des Moines, that wouldn't be insane to me. But then it's like you put one in Texas, you put one in somewhere in the Southeast, maybe probably 2 in the Southeast, and then like some in the Northeast, and like all that kind of stuff. Like, and you could get to where you had 8 of them.
Sure.
Then those 8 are playing against each other, basically like a, like like I said, kind of like an AAU circuit, and maybe they could each have a couple teams or something like that. And then after that, the best of the best go from there. Some of them might go to college still. Some of them could then go and join these like the 2 or 3 select teams that are in the actual G League, and then and they're the ones that are like actually getting paid, and where like a Zion and RJ Barrett, someone like that, like Zion would still have an opportunity to go and prove himself. He'd be proving himself against real pros while getting paid. He just wouldn't be doing it at Duke.
Right.
Where I'm sure that Zion probably still got paid, but that's a whole other discussion.
Well, that's another one. We're opening up lots of wormholes in this one.
Did you see Kansas got their?
Did they finally get the hammer?
NCAA today? No, they didn't get the hammer, but they got their response from the NCAA today.
I think I did see that actually. Yeah.
I started reading it.
I didn't read into it, but I had heard that the NCAA finally got their reply.
Basically, they told Bill Self to go fuck himself. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of what I would have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Kansas. But the interesting thing too, I think one thing that you can do to curb the loss of talent in college basketball, or to mitigate to make up for that, is allow NBA teams to have one more G League roster spot and add a 3rd round of the NBA draft. That way you can make sure that those freshmen get in if the teams want to take them, and any of the really good seniors and juniors that come out of college basketball and that stay around, you give them a chance. Like the Malcolm Brogdons show up and they get a chance, and the George Niangs and the Monte Morrises, that you can make sure that those guys get a chance. Now, obviously, they all got drafted anyways, but like Lindell Wigginton, in a world where there's a 3rd round of the NBA draft, Lindell Wigginton maybe gets taken.
Yeah, well, I think too that you could. I think that another one of the things that the NCAA has whiffed on is that kids should be able to enter the NBA draft, and if they don't get drafted, they should be allowed to come back to school.
Yep. Well, they can. They just can't hire an agent.
Yeah,
but I think that
the problem is if you don't hire an agent, like, you're not going to get drafted.
Right. The agent one is tricky because, yeah, like you say, if you don't hire an agent, you don't get drafted. But in the agent too, I mean, obviously there's plenty of bad agents out there that are really bad people. But there are also plenty of good agents out there. And in the end, an agent is really a financial advisor for these kids. Let them hire an agent. Let a person who, it's their job. Their whole job is to know how this system works.
Well, they're a connection maker,
Sure.
Like, you can't, like, the normal kid doesn't just call up somebody in the NBA and say, like, yo, I want to do a workout.
Right.
Like, that's not how that works.
The agent has the contact. Yeah.
Right. You have to have an agent who's setting those kinds of things up.
Yeah, and and being able to make those contacts, and the agent can probably give you, he can give you a good ideas, like where they he can talk to people, or he or she can talk to people, and get a better feel for where this player might get drafted if they decide to stay. They're a financial advisor. They're truly an advisor to these players that can give them an idea where they might land in a draft to see if it makes sense, because these players can get feedback from the teams, and they'll say, well, we think, we really like you, you're on our board, you're here on our board or something like that. And if you land here, we might try to take you or whatever. And that's what they'll get or whatever. I guess it's hard for us to know exactly how detailed their information is. Like,
yeah.
Oh, but having an agent, one, allows them, they're also a salesman. So the players that, like a Lindell Wigginton,
lobbying for you.
Yeah, you have someone You have someone lobbying for you to help get your name up there, and for these for some of these guys that maybe second round or undrafted, priority undrafted talents or whatever you want to call them, the guys that end up in the summer league. Matt Thomas, if he had an agent working for him coming out, or if he had an agent, I'm sure he did have an agent coming out. But in a situation where he wanted to leave early or whatever, that could sell the NBA teams, or talk to him and say, by the way, this kid can shoot the absolute lights out of the building, and have that salesman. Guys like that might get a better chance.
Yeah, and it's just that to me. it disappoints me how many kids go out each year, and then, I mean, there's probably a lot of kids that pull their name out, and it's like they could be drafted or something like that. They want to come back and improve their stock, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But it's like it should almost be like baseball,
I think actually, let me propose you. I think that it should be hot. Well, baseball is the baseball rule. Correct me if I'm wrong. If they go pro, they can either go pro out of high school or they have to be in college for 3 years.
Yeah, but then also they will gauge whether or not they should draft high school kids
right
off of their signability, So
sure.
It's like they could draft a kid, or there could be a kid who's a first-round talent. Okay, maybe not first round. Second or third round, like those are kind of the rounds that like really that most of the major baseball players come from. That where it's like, okay, this kid is like an electric talent, but he's pretty set on going to school and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, man, it's going to cost a lot to be able to sign him and that kind of deal. And it's like, okay, we're not going to draft him until later because it's like, we're probably not going to sign him anyway,
Sure.
And that's where it's like, it would open the door for the kids who don't get drafted at all, which is obviously a high percentage of the number. The Lindell Wigginton's and people like that, that decide to go out and probably aren't necessarily ready to in the eyes of the people in the NBA. And then there's the people who it's like, okay, we could take a flyer on this guy in the second round, but if he doesn't like that situation, or if we can't pay him enough, then he'll just go back if he thinks that he can go back and improve his stock.
Sure.
And that to me is like, it creates a little more risk for the NBA, while at the same time it might like, that's where now the NBA is doing this with all these high school kids. If I was the NCAA, it's like, all right, here's how we push back at the NBA. We make it where it's like, if you don't sign your NBA deal or you don't get drafted or whatever, you can come back to school.
Right.
Okay, well, that would be a game changer,
Oh, absolutely.
And the NBA is changing the game on the NCAA. Well, now how can the NCAA change the game back, And I don't think it needs to be a battle like that, but I do think that there is some level of it being a battle.
Sure.
Because you have to compete for the best players. Like,
what I like about
that's how it's going to be.
My proposition is actually to go the route of college hockey, where you can come out, you get drafted, and you can go right away, or an NHL team can stash you in college, and then you can essentially choose to come out when you want. You just have to kind of work it out with your NHL team, but they retain your draft rights. If you get that's how the Celtics got Larry Bird. Right. So like a kid coming out of high school could be a first round pick, or a first round pick probably going to go right away, but like a second round pick by an NHL team, and maybe instead of choosing to play in their minor league team for a while, they're going to go to Boston University, or they're going to go to Minnesota or Michigan State or whatever and play hockey, or North Dakota, and they'll play hockey for a few years in college. And get lots of playing time there against some good competition against other future NHL players. And you can kind of work it out with your team to kind of sort of come out of college when you want. You just, if you get drafted right out of high school, if you don't get drafted right out of high school, no problem. You just go to college. If you get drafted
at that point, who pays if you do get drafted and someone, you're going to go to college and whatever, who's going to foot that bill?
Oh, the NHL. Your NHL's
it's
franchise.
It's going to be that team. Yeah. And that's where if they collaborated together, then that's where I think that this whole thing could be fixed a lot. Is it's like, okay, the NCAA doesn't want to view themselves as a minor league system. Well, the reality is that you are.
Yeah, it is. Just embrace it.
Yeah, just embrace that. Embrace that. Don't try and act like you're. The idea of amateurism is the thing that that at the end of the day, it's like, why do you try and be all high and mighty? Play into it.
The concept of amateurism the concept of amateurism, I don't think, is inherently flawed. But the way that the NCAA perpetuates is that the amateurism is the pinnacle of sport, and that is the end all be all. And they market these players as though the pros don't even exist. That they will always be a college athlete for like Kevin Durant. Well, in the NCAA's eyes, Kevin Durant forever, his entire legacy is his freshman year at Texas.
Yeah.
Like that's obviously not what his legacy is. But in the NCAA's eyes, that's how they market people, is that their legacy ends when they leave the college.
Right.
And that's not the reality of the situation. Definitely. So if they were truly, they can have their amateurism cake and eat it too, where they can say these players are amateurs, they're playing for the love of the game, they're playing for their school, all this. But also, Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft next year. Look at this dude.
Right.
Or whatever, watch this guy. Instead of just saying, oh, he's one of the greatest Clemson quarterbacks of all time. He's like, well, he is, but also he's going to be an NFL stud in about a year. Right. So it's like you can have your cake and eat it too, but the NCAA operates so heavily on pride that they hurt themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And they just can't get out of their own way.
Right.
So,
all right, man.
Yeah, I think that's probably an okay place to wrap it up.
Yeah, this has been a good conversation, dude.
Absolutely.
We did not really talk about the things that I think we initially intended to. But
I think the discussion we ended up having was at least, if not more productive than
it was a productive one. All right, man. It's good talking to you.
Absolutely.
I really go to the bathroom, so
I've been.
So I'll talk to you next week. All right.
All right, sounds good. We'll be back next Thursday, 8:00. We'll have a new topic for you. We haven't decided on that, but we'll have a new topic for everybody. So everybody have a great rest of your night. Good weekend. Go Cyclones.